Hi, this is Michael Howe with Gluware, and in this short tutorial, I'm going to take you through what Gluware did as part of the O&A, the Orchestration and Automation Showcase for the ONUG community. And the showcase was around accelerating O&A of multi-domain and cloud using integrations and process automation. So let's jump right into it. A very quick overview of Gluware in terms of Gluware being an intelligent network automation. One of the key things to understand with Gluware is that we want to get you automating quickly with an out-of-the-box application suite that runs on top of our intelligent network automation orchestration engine. So kind of like when you think of Office Suite or the Adobe Suite, Gluware has Device Manager and Drift and Audit, OS Manager, Dashboards, Data Explorer, to in config modeling where we're doing intelligent declarative configuration management. And all these things work right out of the box without any coding, really. This is a no-code platform. But what you often find is when you have products that are no code, you might lose the extensibility or customization that you're wanting. So the next layer in terms of when you're working with Gluware, you may get into using Gluware Lab. Gluware Lab is a IDE built on the Eclipse framework that is a low-code environment that really does enable more of the true like DevOps for NetOps, where there is some a development cycle involved in doing some light coding to customize an abstraction, build a task for Network RPA, which I'll talk about, or do API integrations and that sort of thing. So Gluware Lab is available for customers who have that capacity. Next is what we're launching here at ONUG Spring, which is the conference we're presenting at here in mid-April, around Network RPA. And this is no-code process automation, and this is what we're going to kind of be focusing on in this demonstration, where you can enable process automation, have API integration, and even external integrations. And all of this is building a framework to enable you on the path to AI ops. So building that capability, the autonomous actions, and then building up the data set where we can train the data and eventually enable that auto or assisted type of experience, and as well as enhanced security automation. So this demonstration or use case that we focused on to just demonstrate some of the key attributes we were looking to, which was integrations with other systems via API, as well as process automation. So just to draw your attention, Gluware sits in the O&A layer, so we're purely like in that network automation orchestration. We automate and orchestrate, not limited to, but in this example, the WAN, the data center, and the data center is typically connecting you to your cloud resources. So maybe it's your infrastructure as a service or software as a service. In the kind of narrative we work with here in this demonstration, if you look at the points here, we're saying there were unauthorized changes to the WAN that broke QoS. And ultimately, with breaking QoS, affected an application. And so Gluware frequently gets asked about that. Well, do you have application visibility? Well, we're not a monitoring company, but we do interwork with monitoring companies. So in this example, Kentik, as an observability solution, they're able to look at SNMP and NetFlow and syslog and that sort of thing. They're processing that data. In this example, Kentik flags an issue with Zoom and will make an API call to Gluware to remediate the situation. So that's the kind of working premise of this demo. If we now let's just let me jump out of the slides here and jump into the UI. What I want to show you first is the logic of the response, and then we'll kind of get more into the demo and some specifics around what we're doing here. So I'm navigating into Gluware's Network RPA, and I'm accessing a draft version of the workflow or process that we're orchestrating. So when this process is kicked off, Gluware is filtering or looking at the devices. We happen to be looking at the Cisco core devices that we are going to be applying this automation to. We are then capturing the configuration. We are comparing that config to a known good standard that previously determined, let's say golden copy. If drift has occurred, then we have a logical operator. So if config drift equals no, it will proceed on the then, otherwise it'll go on the else path. So if no drift has occurred, we'll just fire off a notification, and presumably the problem is maybe not on the network layer or not related specifically to a network drift condition occurring. If drift has occurred, which is in this premise, like if an unauthorized user made a change, this would trigger that. And so in that case, Gluware would provision the devices, restore them back to a known good config, assuming Gluware is configuring them. In this case, they are, and we'll have notification. So while this is like, one example, when you think of automation orchestration interworked with monitoring, there are numerous examples around, network optimization, network changes in terms of a response. In fact, even in this version, Gluware could directly detect the network change if that was set up properly. So let's jump into a little bit more of Gluware here. I'll just hit the dashboard really quick just to show you that, where folks kind of generally start with Gluware is saying, what's in my network, and operational users are usually kind of hitting Gluware as a home and saying, okay, what are my total devices? What's my status? What type? And again, the premise here is Gluware is sitting on top of, a WAN, a data center, and potentially even cloud resources in this environment. I won't go into the apps here specifically, but I do want to touch on our config modeling and navigate into the node config area, because what I do want to highlight is that Gluware is actively owning or managing the configuration on these devices. So if I double click into one of these devices and bring up the visualization of what Gluware is automating, we can automate the entire config, but in this example, with this demonstration, we're automating a set of globals and we're automating the QoS feature. So we're automating AAA and Banner and DNS and NTP and QoS and SNMP and others. This is fairly important in relation to Kentik, because Kentik, sitting in the management plane, it needs the devices to feed them information. So one way Gluware can be synergistic with something in the management plane is if you need to make changes to SNMP and NetFlow and syslog, Gluware can automate those changes and roll them out to the network. So we can roll out the changes on the configuration side and tell those devices to send information up to the monitoring solution, in this case, Kentik observability solution. So just wanted to touch on that. So let's jump in and kind of move towards the premise of this demo, which is I'm going to jump on the CLI of this device. And I do need to reference my notepad here. And I'm going to connect to this device, and I'm going to make an unauthorized change through the CLI. And so one of the premises of Gluware is we're looking at helping organizations help to move away from CLI, move away from fat fingering and that sort of thing. So go into config mode, and I'm going to step on a QoS policy reducing the bandwidth available, right? So theoretically in this demo, this config change is ultimately, someone signs in and they're trying to solve a customer problem or whatever, they make a change on a router. Even though it's unauthorized or unapproved, they're trying to work a ticket or alleviate a situation. What they don't know is they just affected an application. So while that's happening, Kentik will be monitoring the network and will understand that that occurred. So back to Gluware, when I go to my workflow activity, my workflows are here, and what I want to highlight is, Gluware has a published API, and Gluware is able to determine the workflows that are running or available and actually fire off a workflow and do that. So when we work with the Kentik folks, basically all we had to do to set them up was enable them with credentials and the proper API call, in this case, a post that's identifying a particular workflow and executing it. So when we run that workflow, it gets kicked off. I'll jump back over into Gluware, and we can see this workflow is now running. And so I will navigate into the log. This is just the workflow level log. And then you can also navigate into the details as well. So if I navigate into the targets, overall in this test bed, there's 20 devices, but Gluware has filtered it down to the ones that meet the criteria. So these ones are running, and I can see those running. Because Gluware natively is speaking down to all these devices, when I click on the logging, I can see logging down to what the Gluware interaction with these devices. So you can see that Gluware is capturing the configurations. That was part of the component, is that capturing it. We do discovery every time we do device discovery every time we interact with the device, looking at versions and other information. So it's capturing and refreshing that data in the Gluware system. Let's go back to info here, because actually tasks. What I want to see is, so we filtered the devices from 20 down to the 6 core devices we're working on. We went and completed the acquisition of those configurations. Now it's on the step where it's provisioning. So by the logic path in it, I know that there was drift detected, and it has determined that drift is detected, and it is going to. So 5 devices, there was no drift. 1 device there, and that's the counts you see here. It's reprovisioning that device, getting a good config back on it, and then when that provisioning completes, you'll see that here, and then the notifications are sent out. So while it finishes up within a few seconds here, I just want to highlight that this is what NetOps has been trying to get to. Take things that humans are doing like manually, like reacting to a user who's complaining about an application. Then maybe they're calling in or emailing in, and a ticket gets opened, and then it goes through a queue, and just kind of the slow sequence. And then even when an engineer jumps on it, they start going box by box and the CLI and troubleshooting and looking for things to occur. So with really kind of any sequence or process you can think of, and that Gluware is capable of around troubleshooting or configuring or drifting or auditing, all these things we've been talking about, Gluware is able to go in and automate those end to end. And then again, you could fire this off manually. You could have this scheduled. In this case, we're triggered via an API call, which I just showed you. And this is where the networking needs to get to, is around autonomic capabilities with interactions. I encourage you to look at the video that is going to be produced from ONUG that's going to go into deeper detail around the Kentik solution and the joint demo that we did. So with that, this concludes this demonstration. Thanks for your attention.